I can imagine you listening to that introduction thinking, goodness me, when are we actually going to talk about some more positive things when it comes to the SNP?
Well, we actually do have a lot of positive things to talk about at the moment when it comes to the SNP because, you know, despite the challenges that we faced, we still enjoy a fairly comfortable poll lead over the Labour Party and a huge poll lead over the Conservative Party, which comes as no surprise to anyone in Scotland. But perhaps more importantly, when it comes to the independence numbers in Scotland, we're still roughly where we were before all this started, around about 50-50, give or take a few percent here or there. And that gives me a lot of cause for hope and a lot of cause for optimism. OK, I want to talk about some of those issues a bit later on. But if I may start with the story that's on the front page of a lot of newspapers today, we've been talking about it with our other guests as well. BBC presenter, unnamed, allegedly paying £35,000 for explicit photographs of the young person, starting when they were 17. The mother says that money was then spent on crack. What's your reaction? I think everyone who's seen this story is deeply concerned by it and deeply distressed about what this means. I think there's a number of questions for the BBC to answer here, not least when they knew about this, and if they did know about it, why they've not acted. I would strongly anticipate that in the coming days, Parliament would expect some answers from the hierarchy at the BBC, and I don't think the public would expect anything less. What
do you think should happen if we don't get those answers?
Well, I think we have to get those answers, and that has to be the priority for all of us at this moment in time, both the public and indeed parliamentarians. Now, parliamentarians have a great deal of sway in that regard. I would be amazed if the government isn't looking to put some of that sway to use today and over the coming days, and indeed the DCMS committee as well. We need to have clarity from the BBC as to what exactly is going on here, because these are very dangerous and very worrying allegations.
Do you think a law could have been broken?
I don't necessarily want to get into the specifics of whether a law's been broken, because I'm not hugely au fait with the law in England in that regard, but I'm very, very troubled by what's been suggested in the papers, as indeed I think everyone is.
The presenter hasn't been named. Of course, there's still allegations at the minute, important to point out, but they haven't been named. This has also led to some other high-profile people at the BBC having to come out because their own name has been falsely linked with the story. I mean, is there an argument that actually the BBC should just come out in the public interest and name this person?
I think as a public sector broadcaster, they perhaps have a duty to the public to make clear that where someone has acted inappropriately, which is what the suggestion here is, that they've firstly taken action, and if they've not taken action, they need to be very clear as to why that is. I think it's ridiculous that you have to see the likes of Gary Lineker tweeting that he's not the person involved here. For them as individuals, that's deeply unfair, particularly given the seriousness of this issue.
I just want to move on to a couple of other subjects now, if I may. Thank you for talking about the story. Just Stop Oil has been something that we've been talking about a lot on the programme today, with very strong condemnation from both Victoria Atkins and Rachel Reeves, who actually said that she thinks they're a bit pathetic. What's your own view on Just Stop Oil?
I struggle with some of their practices, if I'm honest. I think when you're so the oil and gas industry is obviously hugely important to my constituency. Many of the people involved in the industry live within my constituency, or my neighbours, my own family working in the industry as well. They're not bad people. They're people who have a job to do and are just getting on with it. An engineer is an engineer, irrespective of whether they're on an offshore platform, or they're working onshore. So there is a little bit of nuance here that has to be had in the debate. So I'm a little bit troubled by some of their practices, if I'm honest. I don't see how it carries public support. I think some of the outrage over some of the instances is a little bit far-fetched, though. I mean, the confetti yesterday, I mean, was anyone hurt in that regard? And when you juxtapose that versus the storms in Zaragoza in Spain, I think we can see which ones actually caused the most damage here. Is it unfortunate?
I guess it's a wedding. That's what some people say, though. I mean, one of the most important days of your life.
I mean, it's very unfortunate, and I would probably be a little bit upset about it as well, but I'd probably take 4 steps and, you know, take the confetti off me. It's not someone's been hurt here, and perhaps that wasn't the biggest scandal of the day involving George Osborne.
We won't say anything more on that, I think.
No, I won't either.
Although I'm sure many of our viewers know what you're referring to. Right. This week marked 100 days of the newish First Minister Hamza Yousaf. How do you think he's doing?
I think he's doing brilliant, because, you know, as you outlined in your start, it's been a bit of a challenging time for the party, to say the least. We've had the difficulties internally, but I think Hamza's came through it, and what he has done is put the cost of living crisis front and centre, because I think all of us at this moment in time recognise that that's the biggest challenge facing people, and of course, when that is the biggest challenge, government needs to respond accordingly, and within the powers that the Scottish Parliament have, Hamza's sought to do that.
At the same time, though, I mean, we've talked about the hangover that he has from his predecessor being arrested, but also he's ditched or delayed quite a few key policies, legislation to set up a national care service, deposit return scheme, ban on alcohol advertising, protecting marine areas. Does it look a bit, I guess, shambolic is the word I'm looking for?
I think it looks like he's acting like a First Minister who wants to set his own agenda. And I think that's really encouraging. What Humms has sought to do is to reset our relationship with business, something which he's done. He's done very well and very quickly. He's also sought to listen to the views of communities who would have been impacted by the likes of the HPMA proposal. This is a First Minister who's acting according to the wishes of the people, which is what you would expect from the Scottish National Party.
At the same time, though, if you look at the polls, Labour are doing better in Scotland than they have done for an awfully long time. A poll last month in the Sunday Times suggesting that they would actually defeat the SNP at the next election for the first time since 2010. You a bit worried?
I think that was a rogue poll, and every other
poll, sure.
I think every other poll that we've seen over the course of recent months and indeed years has shown the SNP with a comfortable lead ahead of the Labour Party. But look, the next general election is going to be about change. And when it comes to that, I'm pretty optimistic about our hopes, and that's twofold, because when we look at the Labour Party, today you have reports that the Labour Party are simply going to follow through with Conservative spending plans. When it comes to green energy proposals, they've walked away from the £28 billion of investment.
They have indeed. They said that they'll scale up in a couple of years. If you're talking about £28 billion a year, that is fair enough. And also Rachel Reeves said today that she wouldn't necessarily meet the 2-year spending plans of the Conservatives either.
Well, I think it's quite clear that the Labour Party, when it comes to some of these big issues, have been changing their mind on an almost daily basis. But of course, beyond simply Tory spending plans and green energy proposals, the Labour Party are, of course, fully enthralled with Brexit. Now, that's anathema to voters in Scotland, where 72% of people want to be back within the European Union. So if you juxtapose the Labour Party and their negative proposals for the future versus the SNP's, our plan to be at the heart of the European project, have access to the single market, to really deal with the cost of living crisis through that, to be able to have more people of working age in our economy and to give people a choice over their own future. I think it's only quite clear to voters in Scotland that there's one party who offers change and one party who offers real hope, and that's the SNP.
Can I ask you another question? Is the dirty secret of the SNP that actually you really want the Conservatives to do quite well? Because support for independence is a lot easier to make that pitch if the alternative is a Tory-run government in Westminster. If the alternative is Labour and Keir Starmer, suddenly it's a bit harder to make that independence argument.
I would disagree fundamentally with the premise of your question there. So I'm a young lad fae Dundee, and I had to grow up in the thralls of Conservative damage, which took away hope and opportunity for generations of people, which left industry on its knees and left people without opportunities. Under no circumstances would I ever countenance the Tories being good for Scotland, and that's why we've not voted for them since 1955. What we want is something better. We don't want just the same. We don't want Tory spending plans or a rollback on green energy policies or Brexit. We want Scotland to have its place in the world. We want to be part of the European community. We want to offer people hope and aspiration for the future, change for a better future. We see Ireland and what they're doing, Norway, what they're doing. Why not Scotland? Why can Scotland not have that hope?
You're talking about your view of the Conservatives when you were growing up. Given that, would you think about going into coalition with the Labour Party if it meant keeping the Conservatives out of power in Westminster?
So under no circumstances would a Scottish National Party member of Parliament want to be part of a coalition. I don't want to be part of...
Sure, you don't want to be, but would you do it?
No, I don't want to be part of a UK coalition. That's for politicians. I shouldn't be voting on matters to do with England or Wales or otherwise. What I would do is seek to, where there's opportunity, support a government which was adhering to principles that the people of Scotland voted for, like the opportunity to decide their own future. So it's a pretty clear line that the Labour Party would need to cross to come and have conversations with us, and I'd be quite happy to have those conversations with them.
I'm being told we're out of time, but I've got one more that I'm just going to squeeze in, if I may. Sorry, Scott, who's in my ear telling me that we're out of time. Your deputy in Westminster, youngest MP in 350 years, Mhairi Black, she has said she wants to step down because of a toxic environment in Westminster. She said she thinks it's one of the most unhealthy workplaces you could be in. It's a poisonous place. Is she right?
Yes, she is. And I think it's a challenge for all of us across society to reflect upon the fact that Mhairi, someone who was, as you said, elected as the youngest MP in 300-odd years, who is stepping down in her late 20s because of the culture in Westminster, surely something is going wrong, and surely collectively we can seek to right that wrong.
What is going wrong?
Westminster, the entire environment, as Mhairi said, is indeed toxic. It's not fit for purpose. You have a legislature which is based upon simply disagreeing with people rather than working constructively together. Now you get this notion that Westminster is the mother of all parliaments. Well, I would quite happily invite anyone to come to Westminster on Tuesday night when we are going to be debating the legal immigration bills and see if that's the mother of all parliaments, because it will simply be mud getting thrown around with late night votes into the middle of the morning with no hope, no optimism. That's not healthy. That's not good for anyone.
OK, thank you very much indeed for being on the programme. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephen Flynn there,